Lindsey Graham is getting, he's walking a little bit of a fine line here, right? Because he may end up voting for the Biden Supreme Court pick. I mean, that's what makes me nervous about these clips here, where when Lindsey Graham feels like puts his finger up in the air and needs to throw a fit.
Yeah.
He's always worried about getting primaried in South Carolina. He feels like maybe he's not fully cloaked, as it were, and needs to get some protection. Maybe
he's looked like a tough guy.
Maybe he's going to be voting. He thinks he might be voting for the Supreme Court nominee. Again, Childs, Clyburn's candidate, South Carolina justice. We will see who Biden's going to pick. But here is Lindsey Graham. You always, whenever you see Lindsey Graham throw one of these fits, he's doing so out of some type of fear that he has. And then you got to worry about what it is that he feels exposed. He used to be, he was just afraid because he wasn't enough of a Trumpster at first. Remember?
Yeah.
Trump gave out his phone number and mocked him. And so he had to spend the next 4 years. Well, you got to wonder what this is about. But here he is at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing with a person from the ACLU.
And this is also, we should say, a hearing on the civilians that were murdered by the United States in the wake of the Biden administration's Afghanistan withdrawal. We did those drone strikes that were ostensibly in retaliation for the attacks as we were evacuating Afghanistan, and we killed 20 civilians, is my recollection. So they're having hearings on this, and Lindsey Graham wants to look as bloodthirsty as possible. And also, he knows he's going to be taking a vote soon on, and he could be voting to actually confirm a black woman to the Supreme Court. So let's offset here.
Senator Leahy will also join. Senator Graham, you're next.
So I have a slightly different take. General Jumper, is America at war?
Pause it for a second. I'm sorry. This guy, General John Jumper, who is being questioned here, and he's like, I guess, the more right-wing witness for this story. He did not disclose this in his testimony per responsible statecraft, but he was the chairman and CEO of a drone manufacturer called Leidos from 2012 to 2014 and continued to serve on its board of directors until 2018. So he might have an opinion on drone strikes.
American servicemen, sir, we've been at war for a long time.
Well, is the American people at war? If so, who with? Who are we at war with?
Sir, we're fighting an enemy out there who's determined to kill us.
Who are they?
Are these terrorist organizations that we...
Al-Qaeda, is that an enemy of the American people?
ISIS and Al-Qaeda continue to be...
Ms. Shamsi, do you agree that, or do you believe that if Al-Qaeda and ISIS could attack the American homeland, they would?
She's from the ACLU.
Excuse me. Senator Graham, I think what's important is that...
No, what's important is you answer the question first, then give an explanation. It's a simple question. Do you believe if Al-Qaeda and ISIS had the ability, they have the desire, I think, they had the ability, they would strike America today or tomorrow if they could?
Senator Graham, the reason that I'm having a hard time answering that with a yes or no answer is because...
That's all I need to know, because nobody in the world should have a hard time answering that yes or no. If you can't answer that yes or no, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're living in a dream world, because I can tell you right now, ma'am, if they could kill us all, they would. The only reason 3,000 Americans died on 9/11 is they couldn't find a way to kill 3 million of us. If they could find a way to kill 3 million of us, they would do it. So, Mr. Sales, what's the...
Oh, do we not have the part where he asked him about if drone strikes work? It's okay, but he gets a little more animated.
Do we have it?
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, do it.
Is it less, more, the same?
I think it's substantial, Senator. It is not what it was before 9/11, in part because we have used force to degrade their networks and to destroy their sources of fundraising and to harden our borders. Their capability to strike the homeland may be less than it was 20 years ago, but the intention to strike the homeland, to strike us around the world, is still very present.
Would you say their ability to plan an attack in Afghanistan against the American people has gone up since our withdrawal?
Senator, I'm sorry to agree with you that it has gone up. We don't have the intelligence collection capabilities to know what our enemies are doing in Afghanistan, nor do we have strike assets that can take action when necessary.
General Jumper, you're an Air Force guy. I'm a lawyer. You're a pilot. Has the drone program prevented pilots from being put at risk?
That's not the main point, sir, but the answer is yes. I don't think that's the main point of the drone program.
Well, the drone program, has it been an effective tool in terms of killing terrorists?
Very effective, sir.
Has it killed civilians?
It has, sir.
Name any weapon system that hasn't killed civilians.
No.
Name any war that civilians haven't been killed in operations. Count me in transparency. You're right about that. I want to know more about the drone program.
That's really.
But I can't believe we're talking about
I'd like to know how many Americans have been killed in this drone war. How many American civilians have been killed in this drone war? It happens with everybody, he says. Happens with every weapon. Therefore, it's okay. Their ability to strike greatly diminished, but their desire. We haven't gotten rid of the desire to strike the United States. You know what happens when you kill hundreds, thousands of civilians over the course of time?
Starve
Do you think
them.
desire starts to peter out? Like, oh, yeah.
They
No, my
beat
dad
us.
was killed. My child was killed. My aunt was killed. My brother was killed. That has really diminished my desire to strike the United States.
I don't even know what I was mad about before.
He does mention before he doesn't mention any of the U.S. civilians that were killed in our war, our drone war. He does mention 3,000 civilians that were killed on 9/11, 21 years ago, or 20. Now it's 2022, but yeah, so 20 years ago at this point. So that is a continued justification for killing as many civilians and continuing this drone war and this war in general into infinity. That's basically
it is literally into infinity,
Yeah.
because there's always going to be people out there who want to do us harm. There's always, and we're always going to want to do harm to other people. That's the way that works.
as evidenced by the civilian casualties that they're having a hearing about.
Well, by evidence of the fact that he's sitting there trumpeting, drone warfare, period. And that the state of human beings wanting to do harm to other people is never going to end. Look, when you want to cut back on funding for unemployment, you're doing harm to people, right? On some level, you're not trying to kill them necessarily. When you are, what are we doing in terms of keeping people from white collar crime? There's always going to be an intention to embezzle funds,
To steal your wages.
to steal your wage. It's just an absurd. It's a war on intent. It's a war on thoughts.
And the distinction between civilians and combatants, people who are participating in the war, in this nebulous war on terror, that it's largely meaningless. Anybody can be a terrorist if they decide to justify it publicly. The people that are civilians and are categorized as such are probably so egregiously civilians, like, I don't know, children. How 8 children died in that strike? Is that what he's talking about there? Babies? Yeah, then you can't really classify them as militants or terrorists. It's just that they are also using these outdated distinctions in order to justify tribalism, bloodthirstiness, and empire.
And we should be clear, obviously, the Biden administration has been better than the Trump administration in terms of drones, in terms of killing civilians. That's no doubt. But they still have killed civilians, still take a certain amount of pride in it. Announced gleefully the other day they killed this ISIS guy. Actually, he ended up killing himself, didn't he? With a bunch of other civilians.
Which we have no idea if that's actually true.
We don't even know if that's true at this point. We just know that there was a tremendous amount of carnage. So, there it is. Back on the IMs. Horny for war. Sam, I recently saw a clip video of you saying wars don't affect most people one iota. What do you mean? War impacts economy, price of goods, mental health of a generation, redirection of funds, and whatnot. Really want to know more about that. Well, I don't think I said war generally. I said the Iraq War. And I can tell you, I don't know what we still have people there. I was talking about the American public was completely shielded from the impact of the Iraq War. I think aside from obviously people who've sent family over there, military personnel and their family and whatnot, but the average person, American citizen, walking around in New York or in Lincoln, Nebraska, or Billings, Montana, or I don't know, Chico, California. Virtually no concept that we were at war, that we were killing. Some days hundreds of people, some days maybe just tens, maybe over the course of all those years, thousands upon thousands. The war impacting our economy? I mean, show me evidence that the war in Iraq impacted our economy. We went from a huge boom that was built up that was a real estate bubble, to a massive financial crash, to the Fed just juicing banks. And, I don't think that war, I suppose you could argue that the extra expenditure for the military industrial complex helped in some, regional areas, I guess. But we're spending money on those weapons anyways. They've seemed to figure out a way of doing that. The mental health of a generation. Show me the mental health implications for your average American about the hundreds of thousands of people we killed in Iraq. I'm sorry. The redirection of funds? We don't need those funds. Those funds were not going to be expended on anything in this country if they weren't going to that.
It certainly affected the mental health of the soldiers.
Of course,
who had to murder
but we're
people,
talking about the general citizenry. I challenge anybody.
And there are very tangible ways that you can point to how the war completely decimated Iraq. We completely destroyed their clean water infrastructure. We murdered hundreds of thousands of people. We deformed hundreds of thousands of people.
2 million internal refugees, 2 million external refugees. We did this on a daily basis. I was on national radio. Talking about it every day. And I would walk around New York City. I visited Lincoln, Nebraska. Nobody was conscious of it. It was not a big deal. It didn't impact people on a daily basis whatsoever. That was the nature of it. That was also part of the agenda on some level. And that's why, again, why Bush didn't want to have wouldn't allow images of dead U.S. servicemen and women coming home. They wouldn't show the coffins.
It's where the IDW never talks about case studies of censorship like that.
Yeah, by 2004, I'm sure you could go back and look at the network news coverage of the war, and it would, I imagine that they would mention it, but it would get like maybe 15, 20 seconds probably on average a night. X number of people died in Kandahar today. Or there was an explosion. Shiite, bomb went off in a mosque. No, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what that clipped video was necessarily. I don't know if that was a recent or an old one, but I challenge anybody to show me. And I'm not saying this to justify war. I'm saying that we in this country have the ability to wage war and kill hundreds of thousands of people, and the body politic is barely moved by it. And if you want to show me refutation of that, I would love to look at it. And I say this, obviously, it's a huge lament. I was screaming about it on the radio for years. And I can tell you, I mean, it's a very different era in terms of politics, but I mean, people would look at you like you were insane, and other people would. You know, there was a reason why even in 2004, why we had to leave those buildings with bats at night. The only thing that would get people excited or aroused or even engaged in the notion that we were at war is that if they wanted to keep you from talking about how wrong it was that we were in it. That was the only time you could get people who were actually actively, they're burning books. They're burning Dixie Chick albums. It's the only time you get people like sort of like even aware that we were at war, when people were talking about why we shouldn't be at war.
Somehow my life's got great